Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest Minty recaps of March, a video where I will go through the movies I watched this month and give like little mini reviews of them, and also mainly just for me to keep like a totaling diary in a way of things I watched this year, so I can keep track of them as like a little therapy thing as well, because I'm trying to watch a bunch of new movies this month, or this year, just in general, just to keep on track with it, just to, experience things that I have not experienced before. So without really any further ado for that, let's just get into it, because there's 20 movies here we need to talk about. So let's just get into it. And unlike the other ones, I'm not going to say the directors and stuff in this one, because that's going to take a little bit more time to do that, but they will be in the description down below. And if you want to just look at any of the other ones, they are also in the description down below as well. So let me know down in the comments as well as you're watching through if you've seen any of these, or if you will go watch any of these after these little reactions and reviews and such. So here we go. So this month was a fun one where I did a lot of catch up on franchises and such that I like, that I had not watched movies from in quite a while, or were wanting to catch up on them for new movies coming out or have come out recently. So I started off with Creed 2. It was phenomenal. I really loved Creed 1, really like Creed 1, really love Michael B. Jordan in this franchise, and I really love the idea of the Creed franchise as a way of furthering the Rocky franchise and soft rebooting it, continuing it, whatever you want to call it. And I really love that. I really love Creed 1 a lot. And honestly, I hadn't watched Creed 1 in a while, but Creed 2 I thought was phenomenal. I thought it was great. I thought it did everything it needed to do to be better than the first one, because it threw in just enough of the nostalgia from the Rocky franchise, but made it new. Also, I really love the character of Drago's kid. Really liked Victor Drago in this movie, or at least the idea of Victor Drago and what he meant and what he stood for. So I really like that. Also, Michael B. Jordan, phenomenal actor, just in general, phenomenal actor. But yeah, loved everything else. The spectacle of it. It was great. Loved that all. Loved it all. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And I'll be watching Creed 3 at some point. Probably when it comes to a streaming service at some point. I watched, finally, I say finally, Scream 2. Scream 2. So I love the Scream franchise. And it's one of those funny things with me where I love a franchise because of like one movie in the franchise and kind of just forgot to watch the rest of the franchise. So Scream was like that for me. I love Scream 1, and I know for a fact I had watched Scream 2 and 3 at some point in my life, but could not for the life of me remember watching them. So watched them again. They're basically brand new movies to me. Scream 2, it was fun. It was definitely nowhere near as good as the first one, but it was a fun sequel that I thought did some interesting things with it. It was Scream. It felt like Scream, which is what it needed to feel like. It felt like Scream. Give it a 3.5 out of 4 out of 5. Sorry, 3.5 out of 5. 3.5 out of 5. It was fine. It was a Scream movie. I watched the latest one of the Candyman franchise from 2021, which was Candyman. So unlike Scream, I actually hadn't watched any of the Candyman movies before this, but I had heard a lot about this one, and all of the actors in it were great. I loved a lot of the actors in this, and I loved the idea of what it was doing. It was basically taking this like lore and mythos of Candyman and expanding upon it, making it more of a mythological thing, and I really like that for horror. Also, it was it was from Monkey Paw Productions, which is Jordan Peele's production company. So pretty much anything that deals with that company, there'll be another movie later on that deals with that company as well, I'm kind of just loving, because I really like Jordan Peele's eye for films. And I know he didn't necessarily have a hand in this movie at all, but his company did. So I'm like, you know what? It counts. It counts. But Candyman from 2021, great movie. Great movie. Though I do feel like it could have used a little extra bits in some of the characters as well. Like some of the characters could have been actual more characters. But overall, like the movie, give it a 3.5 out of 5. 3.5 out of 5. Next one I watched was Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Last Wish. I messed the title up. But either way, I had heard a lot about this movie going into it, and I'm happy to report it lived up and like surpassed those expectations I had for this movie. This movie was phenomenal, and for a very good while, up until the day of this recording, which we'll get into at some other point for a different video, it was my number one movie of the year. It was definitely my number one so far. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish does a lot for the Shrek franchise, and a lot for this character. And without getting into like spoilers or anything for the film, it deals a lot with really heavy emotions of anxiety, of legacy, of your place in the world and what your story means in the world. It does a lot with that. And also the animation, absolutely stellar. The voice cast, absolutely stellar. Florence Pugh is phenomenal in this movie as Goldilocks and her three bears. Phenomenal. But yeah, highly recommend Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Highly recommend it. 4.5 out of 5. Like I said, it was my top movie of the year up until the day of this recording. Next one that I watched on the same day was Violent Night. I watched these both back to back, basically just because they were both on, I think it was Peacock they're both on, because they're Universal. Yeah, they're both on Peacock. So watch Violent Night as well, finally. David Harbour is really good at being a very particular type of action star. And that very particular type of action star is this, like, kind of grizzled, like, middle-aged, kind of dadly figure, which is basically just Sheriff Hopper from Stranger Things. And it works. It just works. He just works as this archetype. And him playing a badass version of Santa Claus just works. It just simply works. My only gripes with Violent Night, and there's not going to be a lot of movies on here I'm going to have gripes with. I'm going to try to be really positive with all of these, and like one of the positives of like all these, because this is what I do in normal. But the only real gripes I have for the movie were that it took a little too long to get into what I was hoping the movie would get into, which was just being a comically violent Christmas movie. It took a little too long to get to that point. But once it got to that point, once it realized the movie that it was, oh boy, did it like go for full force with it, and it was fun. That's the best thing. It's just a fun movie once it got into it. And David Harbour's just really genuine in it too, which is great. So I gave this one a 4 stars. So then continuing with the theme of catching up on franchises, I finally watched Scream 3 to go along with Scream 2. And Scream 3 was, it was a movie. It was, in fact, a movie. It was not as good as Scream 2. Definitely not as good as Scream, the first one. It was there. It was definitely there. The only parts, really, of it that I think were really great were some of the new actors they added into it. Especially the character who was the actor version of Gale for the movie they were filming in the movie. It got really meta. Scream 3 got really meta. Honestly, too meta, even for the Scream franchise, but she was great. I also love the fact that it put a lot of the focus onto Courtney Cox and to Gale and to Chief Dewey, or Deputy Dewey, and to Dewey, David Arquette. It took a lot of emphasis to put focus on them, which was really cool. I do like that. I thought that was good. I felt that Neve Campbell as Sidney Prescott was very underutilized, like completely underutilized. She wasn't hardly used at all. But it was a Scream movie. It felt the least screamy out of all of them so far that I've seen. It felt the least screamy. And I'll throw this in as well. I also watched Scream 4 again, but I didn't put this on the list because I had already seen Scream 4, and I remembered I had seen Scream 4 because I watched it when it came out. And my thoughts on Scream 4 are that I really like it. I actually really like it. I think it's, for me, without having watched the latest ones, it's like number 2 on my Scream list. I'll probably do a Scream list at some point, just because I like those a lot. But yeah, Scream 3, give it a 3 out of 5. Ironic, I know, 3 out of 5 for Scream 3. But there we go. Next one I watched on the same night was a movie from Netflix that I saw on like a list of like fantasy films. I just want to watch some fantasy stuff. And it was called The Nightbooks, from 2021, called Nightbooks. And it has Kristen Ritter in it as a witch with a white hair, blonde wig, like a white wig, basically. And she's playing a witch. And it's a very intriguing take on Hansel and Gretel, which is really cool. And it's just fun. It's just a really fun Netflix movie. I don't know if it was actually like a full-out Netflix original movie, or if it was one of those like Netflix just bought from somewhere and made it like an original for them. But it was fun. It was a fun, like, kidsy type of horror film. Sam Raimi had something to do with the movie. I think either his production company or himself like produced it or something. He was connected to this movie somehow, and you could kind of feel some Sam Raimi-ness in it, which was pretty cool. And Kristen Ritter just absolutely kills it in the movie as this witch, which is really cool. There are some definite like kid movie things in it for sure, but it's not even that bad. It's not really even that bad. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Like, there's not really much bad with it. It's just a nice, simple, kids spooky, scary movie. Like, if you watch it around Halloween time, I'm pretty sure that's probably a perfect, like, family film to watch. But it's good. It's good. And Kristen Ritter, like I said, kills it. So next one I watched was, just like with Puss in Boots, following the Oscars, I decided to actually finally just carve out some time, and I watched Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which, if you've been following the channel, I have done a lot of reactions to the trailers for many different Pinocchio things, because they all came out at the same time. And 2022 is a very strange year for Pinocchio as a property, I guess, because there were like 3 different Pinocchios that came out last year for really no reason other than they could. But Del Toro's Pinocchio was an absolute perfectly made work of art. I love stop motion animation as well. I just love stop motion animation. And you could tell the absolute sheer passion that went into that movie. And you could just feel it. You could feel it in like every frame of that film. Like, this was a movie that Del Toro has been yearning to make. And it was well worth it. It was well worth the watch. And it was very deserving of winning Best Animated Feature. Like, 100% well deserving of that. Even though I personally liked Puss in Boots more as a film, Pinocchio was a masterpiece. And like, no joke, it was a masterpiece of an animated film, and absolutely loved it. 4.5, clearly 4.5 for that one. It was like, just go watch it. Just go carve out like a good 2 hours to watch it. It is well worth the time. The next thing I watched was like one of those Hulu originals, which came from Fox. It came from 20th Century Fox. This one was one that was just got like thrown on Hulu after Disney bought Fox, called The Princess. It was fine. It was pretty generic type of medieval fantasy action movie, I guess is the best way to put it. It was absolutely passably fine. No, there's nothing wrong with it at all. There's nothing wrong with it per se. The script is a little bare bones. The plot is very basic. The editing can be a little bit better, but you know what? It's fun. It's a fun little action movie, and Joey King is a great leading action star. And she is a badass in this movie as the titular princess. But it was a fun watch. It was definitely a fun watch. I gave that one a 3.5 out of 5. 3.5 out of 5. Might drop it down to a 3, but my like half stars are meaningful as well for the most part. The next one, though, the next film that I watched in March was a pretty big one. And I don't, pardon the pun, it was a pretty big one. But I watched The Whale. Darren Aronofsky's The Whale. This is the one I actually do know the director for, beyond Guillermo del Toro's. But I watched Darren Aronofsky's The Whale after the Oscars and after our beloved Brendan Fraser, beloved from everyone on this planet, Brendan Fraser, finally, getting back into Hollywood, getting back into acting after so long. The Whale is a very emotional, very heart-wrenching drama that truly has some heart to it. And Brendan Fraser is absolutely stunning in the movie. He's just absolutely stunning in this film as the lead character. There's not really much I can say about this movie that hasn't already been said, other than it is an absolute just performance. It is an absolute performance, and has a phenomenal like story in it as well. And it's just A24 being A24 basically, and just letting creators be creative and doing creative things with their films, which is great. And you gotta love it. You just gotta love it. So this one obviously gets a 4.5 out of 5. Very obviously 4.5 out of 5. To go along with that, same night as well, to come down from the massive high of watching The Whale, I also then watched the Uncharted movie from last year. Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg's Uncharted. I don't have any experience with the Uncharted franchise. I know it's a really successful franchise, and weirdly also was the reason why Last of Us got made as a game. There's a fun story behind that. Troy Baker says it on one of the episodes of Play, Watch, Listen. But beyond all that, Uncharted is it's fine. It is fine. It is completely fine. Tom Holland is fine as Nathan Drake. Mark Wahlberg is fine as Sully, though even with me not knowing anything really about the franchise, it doesn't feel like the character. It feels fine. That is the best thing I can say about it. Is like the action in it is pretty good. The puzzles in it feel fun. The movie feels like a fun movie. It's just fine. It is just one of the most, like, I don't want to say aggressively, because that's too aggressive and too, like, mean. I don't really want to be mean with this. It's just, it's fine. It's just completely fine. And I really don't have much else to say about it. It's just very fine. I gave it a 3 out of 5, and that is the middle of the road I can give for it. Next ones I watched these back to back as well. I watched The Fabelmans. Basically a biopic in a way by Steven Spielberg about Steven Spielberg, which is cool, which is really cool. And The Fabelmans is such an interesting movie to me because on every level, this movie is a masterclass of how to make a movie and how to direct it and shoot it and everything. And I don't know if I liked it or not. I don't know. I've had time to sit with it and to think about it. And I think ultimately the movie is not like Uncharted fine, but I think the movie is fine. And like I said, it is a masterclass of how to make a film. I just don't think it was necessarily for me, which is hilariously intriguing to say for someone like me who really loves movies about movies or shows about shows or things like that, of like not meta narratives, but narratives about the creative process or the history or story behind something. So The Fabelmans should be a home run for me, and it really wasn't. Like, I was just kind of sitting there for a while in the movie being like, this is really great to watch. Like, I think I like watching this, but I'm not getting much from this. Like, I thought I was going to. And it could be like an expectations thing, though I didn't really have expectations for it to begin with. I saw like one trailer for it. But it's a master class of a movie that I don't think I liked, which is it's the weirdest thing to say. It's the weirdest thing to say. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I really highly recommend watching it to get your own opinions on it. Very much highly recommend watching it. It's just a really strange movie to talk about. However, the next movie is a really fun one that I also rated the same rating. I watched Rumble, the Paramount Plus original animated movie Rumble, which, my back and forth in these, like, juxtaposition of these movies is just all over the place, especially this past month, all over the place. Rumble was really fun. There was no way I wasn't going to enjoy this movie on some level. It's a kaiju wrestling movie with a lot of influences from WWE that also somehow was sponsored, I'm pretty sure, by WWE, but it wasn't a WWE movie. It was fun. It was just a really fun movie. Also, Roman Reigns and Becky Lynch just voice a couple of monsters in it. That's fun. There's the NXT logo just in the back of a stadium somewhere for no reason other than it can be. There's like a SmackDown poster somewhere just because it can be. It's a kaiju wrestling movie. It has a pretty fun story, too. It has a pretty neat story that's actually well delivered and well told. And there's some pretty decent characters in it. But yeah, it's a kaiju wrestling film. There's not really much else I can say. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Next one, a movie I also enjoyed. I watched Game Night. And Game Night I watched because I wanted to see this movie, knowing I was going to see the Dungeons and Dragons movie at some point. Watch that video when that comes out. I will make that video soon. But I wanted to watch Game Night to get like a priming for the directing style of Goldstein and Daley. This movie was great. There needs to be more comedies, just in general. Like comedies like this aren't made a lot anymore. If they are, they're just like thrown on a streaming service and forgot about. There needs to be more comedies out there in cinema, because comedies are fun. Game Night had a great premise to it. It was funny. It's just that, like, the only thing I don't think I necessarily liked about the movie is just Jason Bateman, and that's not even the movie's fault. I just don't think I like Jason Bateman's like his characters that he plays, which is a complete me thing. That is a complete me thing compared to anything else. But it's a fun movie. It's like an incredibly fun movie that is genuinely funny. There's some great scene-stealing moments from Rachel McAdams and from Jesse Plemons as well. It's really fun. And if you play board games with people and you have like board game nights, something about this just kind of hits at just a different level than something that just hits a different level. But yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was great, and it was a great primer to go into Dungeons & Dragons as well. However, the next movie I watched the same day was actually the worst thing I've ever seen. I am not going to talk long about this at all, but it was a Hulu original called Slayers. I gave it a 0.5 star, and that was being really generous. This movie's terrible. Do not watch it. It is bad. It is just simply bad. And I'm not going to rant. I'm not going to like rant here about it or anything. I'm just going to say, please don't watch it. It is an hour and a half and it feels like 3 hours long. Do not waste your time with it. Do not watch it at all, please. Just really don't watch it. I'm moving on from this now. Like I said, I gave it a half star. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. Next thing was not the worst thing I've ever seen. It is an anime movie called Over the Moon. It was from a studio called Pearl Studios, which is a spin-off studio of DreamWorks that focuses more on like Chinese films, both animated and live action. It's a Chinese anime movie about Chonga and Ho Yi and that like mythological legend, but also with a musical. And it felt like a Disney movie, but it was DreamWorks, kind of. It was fun. It was fun. Only thing I like, iffy about was just some of the character models themselves. But once it got like to the moon and started getting like really into like the animated stuff, it was really fun. It was a really fun movie with some great musical numbers. The song from Chonga herself, that was a phenomenal number. Like that was just a phenomenal number. Yeah, it was just a fun movie. It was a fun, really heartfelt animated movie, and I'm really glad I am experiencing animation from other companies that aren't Disney or Pixar, and I'm really glad that all these studios are like experimenting and really going for it, because I feel like Disney and Pixar have been kind of going a little safer recently with their films, so I'm really glad that other studios are like stepping up a bit and like doing these experimental things with it. So yeah, Over the Moon, highly recommend it. It's on Netflix, highly recommend it. Give it a 4 out of 5. Give it a 4 out of 5. I'm going to talk about these next two back-to-back at the same time, basically, just because really not hard to. But I caught up on the John Wick franchise. I had watched John Wick 1 way long ago. Beginning of the pandemic, I think I watched the beginning of John Wick. And I finally watched Part 2 and Part 3, because Part 4 just came out. So I finally watched John Wick Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. I gave them both 4 stars. Pretty much equal in my eyes for the most part. They're John Wick films. They're John Wick films. These films have been out for a while now. They completely changed the game in action and on action movies and action choreography. Rightfully so. They're great. Keanu is phenomenal as John Wick, and these movies are fun. These are really fun action movies that change the game in terms of action, and they are great. Like, they have really simple stories. The acting is next level for every one of them. The action is next level for every one of them. The music's great. My only issue with them is that this is probably just from watching them streaming, but like the audio mixing for at least the streaming versions of them is way off, and there are a lot of times you cannot hear the characters, and that's like a technical thing. So just you can fix it on your own. Like, you can try and fix it on your own somehow with like your own audio setup. But yeah, audio mixing was weird with these movies. But anyway, they're both really good movies. They are rightfully great action movies, as everyone has already said before. Give them both 4 out of 5. They're both really good, and I can't wait to see John Wick 4 at some point. Next to last movie I watched during the month was another animated one. Finally caught up on this one. Wendell and Wild. The reuniting of Key and Peele, finally, after years of them doing their own separate things. But I watched Wendell and Wild. Also, Henry Selick, just reclaiming that genre of stop-motion creepy films. Henry Selick, a man that I do not believe gets enough respect for doing a bunch of movies that we all know and love, because a certain Tim Burton's name was attached to one of them, and everyone thinks Tim Burton directed Nightmare Before Christmas. He did not. Henry Selick did. So this is basically just Henry Selick just reclaiming that genre. One in the Wild is a messy film. It is very messy. The story is a bit bloated. There's a little bit too much going on, but I really loved it. It had a lot of really great stuff in it. Very, very diverse cast. Very diverse. The story, while it was a bit bloated, I liked it. I really liked it. It was gorgeously animated because it's that Henry Selick stop motion animation, and it was just fun. It was really fun. Also, the return of Key and Peele together, they play off each other so well. They have that great chemistry. It was a fun film. Very fun, great stop motion animated film. I gave it a 4.5. I might have dropped it down to a 4, but I'm going to give it a 4.5 and I'm leaving it there. It was messy, but it was very good. And then the final movie I watched in March of this year, I specifically set out the time to watch it as the last movie for the month. And I watched a movie from 1985 called Tempopo. As it is described, it is the first ever Japanese noodle western. And I cannot think of a better way to describe it. It is something. It is something. I went into the movie expecting a drama. I did not get a drama. I got a Monty Python-esque comedy about a single mother trying to make the best bowl of ramen to help her business, and a bunch of random dudes going into her life and just helping her make this bowl of soup and asking for nothing in return other than the satisfaction of being able to say, I helped this woman with her business and I helped her make a good ass bowl of ramen noodles. And it's also intercut with random side story skits about food just across Tokyo that aren't connected at all to anything. They're just there. And I'm describing a movie that sounds bad. It's not. It really, really is not. It is a phenomenally made comedy that is so genuinely heartfelt and so genuine about ramen noodles that I loved this movie. I loved it. It's easily in my top 10 for the year. Like no stop at all. It is in the top 10. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 if you couldn't tell. It's phenomenal. I highly recommend watching Tampopo. There's a reason why it's in the Criterion Collection. It is so good. Also, just be aware, it is rated PG. This was also back when ratings really didn't exist for movies. There is a very, very erotic sex scene in the middle of the movie involving food. Just be aware of that. This movie is not actually rated PG. Well, it is rated PG, but this is again back in a time when PG ratings really weren't a thing. That's my movies. That's the movies that I watched this month. All 20 of them. Let me know down in the comments below if you have watched any of these before, or if you are now going to watch some of these. I highly recommend watching all of them, except for Slayers. Don't watch Slayers. But I highly recommend watching the rest of them just to get your own opinions on them. And if you like these videos as well, let me know as well. And if you like them as well, obviously leave a like as well. And if you want to see more videos like this and want to see more videos that I do on the channel as well, like reactions, and I will start doing essays as well shortly for other movies and franchises I want to talk about, leave a little subscription as well. It definitely does help out, mean a lot, and you get to join this lovely little community that keeps slowly but surely growing of all you very lovely entertainment lovers and enjoyers out there as well. And until next time, right over here, going to be a playlist for the other Minty recaps of other months of movies that I have watched. So go ahead and watch those if you like these and you want to get more recommendations. And over here is going to be a video that YouTube recommends for you as well. And until next time, just keep watching movies, everyone. Love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, peace, everyone. Peace.